الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين. We were talking about the principles of interaction in hadith quoted from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam. And the principles of interaction were divided into four: the way we have to interact with God, the way we have to interact with ourselves, the way we have to interact with people, and the way we have to interact with the dunya. We discussed the first two aspects. The third aspect, the way we have to interact with people, أصول معاملة الخلق. It was 7. We talked about al-hilm, forbearance, af, forgiveness, tawadu, humbleness. Now, we have some others as well. We talked about nush, wishing well for others, as-sakha'u, wal-shafaqa, wal-adlu, wal-insaf. There are 3 more. Generosity, compassion, and justice and equity as one. Al-adlu, wal-insaf, justice and equity. These are the other 3 that we want to discuss tonight, inshallah. Now, generosity is, of course, something commended by everyone. I mean, every human being would commend generosity. And if there was no generosity, there was no bond between people. There was no charity. There was no help given out to people who need it. So it is something that everyone would commend, and regardless of religion, regardless of belief in God, this is something in human conscience, that we have to help others, we have to be generous. When it comes to religion, when we talk about generosity with regards to religion, of course it finds more meaning, because then religious teachings tell us that, first of all, you shouldn't be very much concerned about the world, about wealth. And that encourages us to help others when we have, and even when we don't have. It is not important how much we give out, or it's not important how much we have. The importance is attached religiously to the attitude that you don't want everything for yourself. You regard yourself as one with others, and that is why you would like to give out. At the time of the Prophet, people were very poor in Medina. You know that the Muhajirun, the migrants, they had migrated to Medina. They had left everything behind. People of Mecca were very well-to-do. People of Medina were somehow mediocre. They were in between. They were not very rich. Now, you can imagine suddenly an influx of immigrants have come to this city. They have left everything behind. They come with empty hands. And now these people of Medina are to support the Muhajirun as well. Now, you can imagine how poor the community was. They were very poor. And despite that, when the Prophet wanted them to give charity, to help towards the society, you see that some people came, for example, for the whole week they had only 2 sa' of date. Sa' is about 3 kilograms. Now, they brought 1 to the Prophet, and they didn't have anything other than dates. That was their main food. They brought 1 sa' to Prophet, and 1 they kept for themselves to help the community. And sometimes the hypocrites ridiculed and mocked that, look, if he is Prophet, if this is the Prophet of God, then of course we wouldn't want to follow him. He is even in need of this amount of dates to feed his followers. And in Surah Tawbah, you remember I talked about Surah Tawbah, chapter 9, that mentions why some people have become hypocrites. The history talks about the history of them. And the issue is brought up. الذين يلمزون المصدقين في الصدقات والذين لا يجدون إلا جهدهم فيسخرون منهم. They ridicule those who bring whatever they have. This is the extent that they can help. They ridicule, they mock. سخر الله منهم. Let Allah ridicule them. How Allah would mock and ridicule people? By not letting them to understand things. They don't understand. They don't understand the source of this action. It comes from a pure soul. Anyhow, let's look at certain traditions about generosity and how a person, a believer, whether wealthy or not wealthy, should be generous. There's one tradition which says, and this is very important, this is very important for us Muslims when we behave and others watch our behavior. ما جعل الله أولياءه إلا على السخاء وحسن الخلق. You know, there are two things that God has somehow made his friends with, those two things. Awliya is the plural of wali. Waliullah is a friend of God. Are we friends of God? I'm talking about myself. Am I a friend of God? No, I'm not. I'm a believer. Friend means that you are so close, you are intimate. Means that now Allah lifts the veils between you and him. You become quite intimate with each other. Secrets, he doesn't keep secrets from you. You know the secrets of this world. This is awliya. This is when you become a waliullah, a friend of God. And this friendship, of course, is two-way. Now, his awliya are built on generosity and good character. As-sakha wa husn al-khulq. It's very interesting. We think faith is about worshipping, going to Hajj, fasting, praying. But awliya Allah, Allah says this is the most important thing. What we do between us and God, that is very important, but that is between us. When we come to society, when we go to the community, what is important there? The people do not want us for our prayer or worship, or do not care about our prayer or worship. Why should they care? Or why should ever we tell them that we are good worshippers, or we pray, or we fast? No. What concerns them is how we behave, how we treat them, how generous we are, how good personalities we are. This is important. Now look at this hadith. This is telling us a very deep thing about our faith. قال الله تعالى. This hadith Qudsi, actually, Allah is talking to the Prophet. إن هذا الدين ارتضيته لنفسي. This religion, I am pleased with it for myself. Means anyone who worships me through this religion, through this faith, I accept. You know, sometimes we feel that, okay, people have different religions, different methods of worshiping, different faiths. But if they have just improvised it themselves, would it be acceptable to God? We don't know. I mean, if tomorrow I say, instead of praying 5 times a day, what I do, I, for example, sit 5 hours on different intervals and think about God. Okay, this is a way of worship I've improvised. But is it acceptable? Does it lead to the result which God wants to get from our worship for us? Does it lead or not? We don't know. So when here he said, إِنَّ هَذَا الدِّينَ ارْتَضَيْتُهُ لِنَفْسِي, I'm pleased with this method of worshiping, with this religion, means that it leads you. It leads you to where I want you to go. وَلَنْ يُصْلِحُهُ إِلَّا السَّخَاءُ وَحُسْنُ الْخُلُقِ. Now, I tell you about this faith. This faith is very good. I'm pleased. If you follow this faith, I'm pleased with it. However, you know what makes this faith beautiful. What makes this faith good? It is generosity and good character. حسن الخلق. Why? As I said, people do not care about my Salatul Layl. Okay, I stand 2 hours before dawn, I pray before Allah, I cry. What does that to do with people? Am I a good husband? In the morning when my wife wakes up, do I not shout at him, for example? Shout at her? Yeah, well. If I go to workplace, am I a good person? You see, these things do not deny each other. On the other side, you cannot say, because I am a good person, I don't pray. No. These are different aspects of the same thing. The important thing about this hadith is that after saying that Sakha wa husnul khulq, generosity and good character, makes this religion perfect, it says, فَأَكْرِمُوهُ بِهِمَا مَسْتَطَعْتُمْ. Honor this faith with these two. What does that mean? Ennoble this faith with these two. You see, you ladies are wearing hijab. Everyone knows you with that. You are Muslims. Now, you are Muslims. What does that mean? What does to be Muslim, what does that mean? Again, for people. For what you do between you and God is not important for people. What does it mean for people? Okay, you honor this faith. How do you honor this faith? How do you make it noble? Akramuhu. You make it noble by showing the characteristics which are important for this relationship with God. Generosity, sakha wa husn al-khulq, and of course good character. Sometimes we feel that this should be only among Muslims. No. Not only among Muslims. Among Muslims and everyone. Sometimes we think that Muslims should have a sort of bitter attitude towards non-Muslims. You see, at the time of war, of course, when British were fighting against Germans, they had very bitter attitude towards each other. They swore at each other. Anyone befriending would have betrayed their country, of course. It's the case between Muslims and non-Muslims. At the time of the Prophet, it was the case. Befriending meant betraying, because they were at war at some stages. But when they are not at war, لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين. This is between Muslims and Mushriks at the time of the Prophet. Allah does not prohibit you to do good, to do justice, to have good relation with those who do not fight you for your faith. لا ينهاكم الله. This is in Surah Mumtahana. لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين ولم يخرجوكم من دياركم أن تبروهم وتقسطوا إليهم. Those who did not fight you, those who did not remove you from your land, why should you fight them? Why should you not be good to them? Tabarruhum, tabarru from bar means do all types of good to them. It's good. Allah is advising you. Allah likes it. Wallahu yuhibbul muqsatin. Allah likes it. This is good character. إنما ينهاكم الله عن الذين قاتلوكم في الدين وأخرجوكم من دياركم وظاهروا على إخراجكم أن تولوهم. Again, this tawallahum is a different thing. God is warning you about those who fight you for your faith, who remove you from your land, who help your enemies. Okay, you should not be friends with them because this is betrayal. Therefore, for everyone, for animals. Once Imam Hassan al-Mushtaba alayhi salam was passing and he saw that someone was sitting, a dog was sitting in front of him. And he had just some piece of, it was a worker or something, it was lunchtime. And he was resting, eating. And he was taking one morsel for himself, one morsel he gave to the dog. Imam al-Shaba watched. And then when he finished, he asked him, why makes you to do this? Why do you give from your food, which I know you need it, why you give it to this dog? He said, this dog was watching me. I was ashamed. I realized it was hungry. I was ashamed, so I took one morsel myself, one morsel, gave to him. Imam said, okay, come with me. You deserve something. And he took him home and gave him a huge gift. What he showed was not, of course, just giving a few piece of bread to a dog. Showed what was inside. So ennoble this faith. Make people realize that your connection with God means something in society as well. It's not just between you. I know some people, for example, in family, always say zikr, pray, these things, but they are very bad with their family, they are very bad with friends, and they think that because they have this connection with God, that's enough. Okay, this is the hadith that we hear. As-sakha wa shafaqa, compassion. Compassion for people. That's another very important thing. Now, shafaqa means fear out of concern. Now, this shafaqa, we may be towards God, we fear God. This is different from taqwa. You know, we have many different words for fearing God. We have shafaqa, we have taqwa, we have khashya, we have khawf, we have ikhbat. All these things are different manifestations of the states of our hearts when we contemplate about God. And one, of course, is shafaqa. We fear him out of concern. What concern? To upset him. He doesn't deserve to be upset by us, isn't it? I mean, he has given us all the bounties. He has given all these things. Why should we upset him? And upsetting, of course, we are talking in our language. God would never change states or attitudes. But upsetting means doing things which would hurt us and others. This is what upsets him. We have in dua, Allahumma inni as'aluka ma yurdik wa a'udhu bika mimma yu'dhik. Ya Allah, I ask you to make me do things which would satisfy you and seek refuge to make things which would annoy you, which make you upset, make you unhappy. So yes, we have shafaqa from God. That means we fear. We have concern, fear out of concern that we would not upset him. He doesn't deserve to be upset. He doesn't deserve to be forgotten. Isn't it? I mean, if you forget your friends or your close relatives, how would they be upset from you? He doesn't deserve to be forgotten. Now, when it comes to people, it means you have that fear out of concern. You have fear for your children. When they are crossing the road, they are not having an accident. You fear for your children's education. You fear for your children's future. This is shafaqa. And this should be something between everyone, between all human beings. This is one of the principles of interaction with people, shafaqa. We have a verse in the Quran, in Surah Tur. The mu'minun are talking when they are in paradise. One of the oft-quoted things in the Quran is that when we go to higher worlds, we remember this world and we remember the source of whatever we have there. The source of whatever we have there. That for this very little that we have done in this world, what great favor God has given us. And there, to see things You do not go from here to there physically, probably. Of course you can, but it happens just by intention. You intend to be somewhere and you are there. I don't think science fictions have made such films yet. They have made films about the body transfer and such things, but it is more than that there. You just want to be somewhere, you are there. Or you just want to talk to someone in the other part of the universe, you can talk to them just as seeing each other. Like, for example, in Paradise, in Surah Muddathir, we have when people are in Paradise, they ask the people of hell, fi jannat, when they are in paradise, yatasa'aluna anil mujramin, they have a conversation with criminals. Out of curiosity, you know, people who are in paradise are not sinless people. Their sins are forgiven. Just like us, inshallah, all of us will meet in paradise, and we talk about these sessions in Toronto and such things. But when they are there, they talk to each other. And they say, well, we had lots of sins, they were forgiven, now we are living eternally in bliss. Then they ask each other, those who went to hell, why did they go to hell? How did they do it? It's not possible, because we did many things, and they're all forgiven. Why aren't they forgiven? Why aren't they coming here? So they say, okay, let's go and ask them. No, they don't go to hell, they just are in front of each other. They are just in front of each other. يَتَسَاءَلُونَ عَنِ الْمُجْرِمِينَ. They have a conversation with the criminals. مَا سَلَكَكُمْ فِي سَقَرَ. What happened? How did you make it there? It's not possible. We have done many things wrong, but we are here in Paris. How did you make it there? يتساءلون عن المجرمين ما سلككم في سقر قالوا لم نكن من المصلين. We had no connection with God. Here salat means connection. Of course, this is the general meaning of salat. We had no connection with God. Was that enough? No. ولم نكن نطعم المسكين. We did not feed the poor. You see how these two are coming together? لم نكن من المصلين ولم نكن نطعم المسكين وكنا نخوض مع الخائضين. We just talked vainly, ridiculed whoever talked about a purpose for this life. Okay. وكنا نكذب بيوم الدين. And then we didn't find anyone to help us here. This is how this conversation goes. There are many, many occasions in the Quran where this conversation between people of paradise and hell is mentioned. Now, here in Surah 2, there's a conversation between people of paradise. They are talking, how did God bring us here? How did we come? We were sinners. What happened? قالوا إنا كنا في أهلنا مشفقين. We had shafaqah when we were in our families, in our people. Compassion. فَمَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا. God blessed us because of that. وَوَقَانَا عَذَابَ السَّمُومِ. We should have ended in hell, but Allah kept us. God kept us from that. إِنَّا كُنَّا مِن قَبْلُ نَدْعُوهُ. We used to call him. We had connection with him. We had connection with him. إِنَّا كُنَّا مِن قَبْلُ نَدْعُوهُ إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْبَرُّ الرَّحِيمُ. He is very merciful, hugely doing good, kind all the time. This is how they feel. Of course, they don't deserve to be there. None of us deserve to be there, but inshallah, all of us will be there. So this compassion, fear for people, having solidarity with people, another thing. What else? These two last things which are mentioned here, al-adlu wal-insaf, justice and equity. Now, maybe equity is not a good translation of insaf. I don't know how we can translate insaf in English. But the difference between the two, al-adl and insaf, adl is when you are judging people, or when you want to somehow give shares to people, then you have to have justice. You shouldn't discriminate. Insaf is when you are judging you and others, you include yourself. And then, this is more difficult than justice, isn't it? You have to equate yourself with other people. You shouldn't want more for yourself. And this is where we usually have shortcomings. We cannot. We cannot put ourselves in the shoes of other people and see what they think about us, or how they would see us when, for example, we don't help them. When they want help, for example, how they would see that. This is the nuance between the difference between al-adl and insaf. This is apparently, especially insaf, is very difficult. I mean, you talk bad about someone behind their back. If they talk bad behind your back, you become very upset. You don't like things. The standard meaning of insaf, which is in all books of akhlaq, since the beginning of human life, in all scriptures, is that treat others the way you like to be treated. This is the golden rule, isn't it? Treat others the way you like to be treated. And this is difficult. Usually, even if, for example, not in our social relations, we do not wrong others, in our thought, we don't expect other people do things to us that we do to them. We don't expect people receive things, if they do something good, the way we expect to receive if we do the same good. We usually belittle the work of others and try to somehow add value to our own work. Now, this is difficult. Before going to these traditions about adl and insaf, let me tell you a very beautiful story. The Prophet, peace be on him, had a friend before becoming a prophet, before being appointed as the prophet. They were very close because they were very like-minded. For example, everyone drank. In the society, they never drank. They both used to worship God. They were not mushrik. This man his name was Uthman ibn Maz'un, and was a great man. And you probably have heard any relative of the Prophet who passed away, like his daughters or his sons, after burying them, he stood on the grave and said, "Al-Hiq or Al-Hiqi bis-Salaf as-Salih, Uthman ibn Maz'un, go and join the good predecessor, Uthman ibn Maz'un." It shows how close Prophet was with this man. Now he says that we were together, we were of course very close friends, and suddenly he came to me, Muhammad came to me sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and told me, "I am the messenger of God." Oh, how? We were friends with each other all these years. You were not messenger of God. Suddenly you say, "I'm messenger of God, you are appointed." How come? He says, I could not accept. I really could not understand. I said, okay, because I didn't want to lose friendship with him. I didn't want to upset him. I said, okay, you are the messenger of God, and I called him messenger of God, but in my heart, I did not believe. You know, la ikraha fi din. The faith cannot be forced into hearts. It's impossible. Impossible that you can force faith into the heart of your children, your friends, your brothers, if they don't want to accept it. Okay, now, he said we are going along with each other for a while. Then one day we were sitting in front of, I don't know, his house or my house. I have to check the hadith. And we were talking. Suddenly he was distracted from me, and after a while he came back, started to talk. I said, what did distract you? Ya Rasulallah. Of course he used to say Ya Rasulallah because he liked it. Probably he thought he likes it to be called Ya Rasulallah. What did distract you? He said, Jibreel came to me and revealed a verse. I said, what was that verse? He said, this verse in Surah Nahl. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. God commands you to justice and benevolence and giving to relatives, this generosity, and forbids you from indecency, from vile acts, and from transgression and injustice. يَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنْكَرِ وَالْبَغْيِ يَعِظُكُمْ. This is a reminder. You know this. This is a reminder. So that you remember, يَعِظُكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَذَكَّرُونَ. Because all of us know in our conscience that these are good things. God is just reminding us. Now, Uthman says that when I heard this, something happened in my heart. I thought to myself, Uthman, you are an idiot. What is this man calling to? Is all the values that you have stood for all your life. What is God telling me? Telling me to stand for justice? To be benevolent to people, to be generous, and to, of course, avoid from indecent, vile things, which is not something that human beings should do. So he says, from that moment on, faith entered my heart. Before I didn't have faith. Faith entered my heart. And if we think about it, yes, of course, this is what is important when we interact with people. As I said, it's not related to people. It's irrelevant for them whether we do Salatul Layl or not, or whether we fast in Ramadan or not. What is important is how we behave. Now look at these traditions. I said it is difficult to somehow have insaf. First of all, a very beautiful tradition from Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam. He reports from the Prophet, peace be on him, Tuba liman, lucky is the one, anfaqa al-fadla min malih, whatever is in excess from his wealth, he generously gives in charity. Amsaka al-fadla min qawlih, whatever is in excess in his talk, keeps it for himself. Talk you keep, money you give. We usually do opposite, isn't it? Talk we give, money we keep. Now, tuba liman anfaqa al-fadla min malih. You give what is extra from your money, keep what is extra from your talk, وَأَنْصَفَ النَّاسَ مِنْ نَفْسِهِ, and have insaf with people. And then Imam Sadiq alayhi salam mentions that the most difficult acts and the master of all actions, the master of all, Sayyidul A'mal. In another hadith we have the most difficult with regards to dhikrullah, which I mentioned, but in this hadith we have Sayyidul A'mal. The master of all actions is Insafun nas min nafsik hatta la tarda bishay'in illa radita lahum mislah. To have insaf with people so that you do not want anything for themselves unless you want it for yourself as well. This is one. Second, مواساتك الأخ في المال. Muwasat is when you don't see any difference between yourself and others in money. I have money, you need it. Why should I keep it? I give it to you. Oh, it's very difficult, of course. I agree, it's very difficult. However, if we want to see what is the behavior of a real believer, this is it. Now, a real believer, wouldn't they need savings and other things? Of course they need. However, the point is, when they see others in need, they think that, well, what would I have done with my savings if I was in need now? I would have spent it. Now, this man, this woman now needs this money. So let me give, this muwasat is one of those things which is very difficult, of course, to practice. وَذِكْرُ اللَّهِ عَلَى كُلِّ حَالٍ. And remembering God in every situation. Then, of course, remembering God, what does that mean? لَيْسَ سُبْحَانَ اللَّهِ وَالْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ وَلَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ أَكْبَرُ. I don't mean you to say Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah. No. This is good. This is good. This is dhikrullah. But what I say about Sayyidul A'mal is not this one. What is dhikrullah in every situation? Whenever you are faced with a case, in every situation, before embarking on action, remember God. Does He like it? Am I doing something which satisfies Him, or enrages Him, or annoys Him? This is remembering God in every situation and every moment. And this is what in another hadith has come as the most difficult obligation that God has made for His servants is dhikrullah kathiran, to remember Him abundantly. And then again, Imam says, I don't mean Subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar. What I mean is that whenever anything comes your way, you remember Him and say, is this a ma'siyah or is it ta'ah? Is it obedience or is it disobedience? And then you act accordingly. These are these seven, I think we exhausted the seven now. These seven are actually the main principles of behavior of a Muslim. When I say a Muslim, I am using this the primordial religion of God, all religions, because we believe that God only has one religion, and that is Islam. And that one religion is preached by all the prophets. And therefore, this is for everyone who wants to be a godly person. This is the type of behavior that they should have. And of course, we want to talk about the manners of Imams, the manners of the Prophet. We know about manners of the Prophet, of course, the way he dealt with people. And manners of A'imma alayhimus salam. Let me just mention one story. Once Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam was traveling, and on the way, he was traveling alone. What was the context, we don't know. And at that time, the hadith doesn't mention whether he was the caliph or not, but the context tells us that he was the caliph. He was traveling alone, and on the way he came across a Jewish man who was traveling as well. So because both of them were alone, they started to walk together or ride together and talked about different things. They didn't talk about religions, so that we say, I'm a Muslim or I'm a Jewish. They talked about different things. And then the Jewish man asked, where are you going? He said, I'm going to Kufa. Imam said, I'm going to Kufa. And the Jewish man said, okay, we part just a little bit ahead because I'm going another way. When they reached that crossroad, Amir al-Mu'minin continued to go with the Jewish person. And after a while, he asked him, why are you coming this way? Didn't you say you want to go to Kufa? He said, yes, just for the respect. Because our Prophet has said that when you accompany someone while you are traveling, when you want to part, follow him for a while. He said, oh, did your Prophet say this? This is good. You are a Muslim, I am a Jew, and you are doing this to me. Who are you? He said, I'm Ali ibn Abi Talib. Wow, this is a caliph, or what? You are Ali ibn Abi Talib and you do this? You see, this is how the behavior should be. We shouldn't be fooled by these superficial understandings of Islam that people have. The way they talk about, the way they behave actually. And of course, these things have been there in the whole history of Islam, and it hasn't been able to somehow change the beauty, the beautiful face of Islam. That's why people are attracted to it, despite all these misunderstandings that Muslims have, and despite these rash behaviors that Muslims have at times. We see that still it is attractive. It's all because of these spiritual and behavioral aspects that Islam teaches, like any other religion, any other faith which is based on connection to God and compassion, generosity, and all these things. Okay, what remains is to talk about the relationship with dunya, interaction with dunya. Inshallah, we will cover that tomorrow. Before going to talk about Ashura, one thing also we have to bear in mind. I talked about insaf with people. I think one aspect that we usually forget is insaf with God. We really don't have insaf with God. We don't have. I mean, we always want from Him, and we don't think that we have to give something. Not to Him because He does not receive anything. Give something in appreciation from the bottom of the heart, something in appreciation. Once Musa said, God, how can I thank you? How can I thank you? And he said, well, thank me the way I deserve. He said, how can I thank you the way you deserve? Because if I thank you for something, it means you have inspired that feeling in my heart. You have established a connection between me and you. You have chosen me to be among the thankful. So then I have to thank for that. Now, if I thank for that, it means you have made me wise to think about it, to know it. And then I have to thank for that, and so on. So how can I thank you? God said, now you are thanking me. This very realization that everything comes from me and you cannot thank me. This very realization that we have, appreciation in heart, this is thanking God. And usually we don't have this insaf with God. We don't have it usually. He doesn't forget us, we forget Him. He always cares about us, we don't care about Him. He provides for us, we are not thankful to Him. Before being able to give thanks for what He has given us, we want more, isn't it? We are not munsif. If He, on the day of judgment, if we want to ask these things from us, I think we have just to turn away and go to hell ourselves. We shouldn't wait for judgment or anything. Just turn and go. But the point is that He's more generous than this. He's not going to ask these things from us or put us on the spot for these things. وَأَمَّا مَنْ أُوتِيَ كِتَابَهُ بِيَمِينِهِ فَسَوْفَ يُحَاسَبُ حِسَابًا يَسِيرًا. A very easy account. If you are overall good, a very easy account will be given to you. He wouldn't ask you about these things, and inshallah, all of us would prosper in his mercy and kindness. Salawat. To show noble character in comfortable times may be possible and easy. But to show noble character in hard times is difficult. And this is what we saw from the companions of Hussein alayhi salam, showing noble character in hard time. Do not violating the standards, the values of their behavior. We remember several times, and inshallah on the day of Ashura when we read Maqtal you would see, they had chance to kill their enemy, to destroy them, and Hussein said, I do not want to start the battle. You see, this is the standard. Even if we are killed, this is Muharram. I don't stop the battle. I don't start the battle. If they start the battle, then I fight them, of course. But I am not going to violate the sanctity of this month. This is how they stood on their standards. Now, one of the most both heartbreaking and refreshing stories is the story of Abbas alayhi salam in Karbala. A young man, you know, he was born in 26 after Hijrah, and in 60 after Hijrah, he was 34 years old. A young man, but with lots of merits, lots of merits. He was especially educated by his father, Imam Ali, and that's why we have, he said, Imam Ali said about it, Inna waladi al-Abbas zuq al-ilma zaqqa. I have like a pigeon when they give food to their children, to nestles. I have given knowledge to Abbas like that. Inna al-Abbas, inna waladi al-Abbas zuq al-ilma zaqqa. This is with regards to his knowledge. With regards to his power and bravery, since young he attended battles with his father, and no one could defeat him. There's a very beautiful story in Battle of Siffin. In Battle of Siffin, he was 14 years old. But very strong, very strong. However, of course, his structure at that time was like Imam Ali's structure, the same sort of structure in strength of bones and body and such things. And Muawiyah sent Abu Sha'tha. Abu Sha'tha was probably the strongest man in his army. You know, these single battles that single combats that they did at the beginning of the battle was to frighten the enemy. They sent the strongest man so that a few combatants would come and they kill them and the enemy is terrified. So he sent Abu Sha'tha, very famous in Arab. And said, you go and challenge the army, ask for someone to come and fight you. Now, a young man came from the other side with covering his face. No one in the battle, in the camp of Ali knew who this man was. Suddenly he came out of nowhere and went for the battle. And they were all thinking, who is this man? Who is this brave man going for Abu Sha'tha? And to Abu Sha'tha, he showed his face. A young boy. Wow. Abu Sha'tha was angry. He said, I am the match for 1,000 men. How Ali has sent this young boy to fight me? He became very angry. went back to Muawiyah and said, I'm offended. A young boy is sent to fight with me. Muawiyah said, okay, you cannot just come back and say, I don't fight. He's there now. He said, okay, I send my son. His son was sent. In a blink of an eye, the son was on the ground. Oh, and he had 7 sons. This is very famous in Battle of, very famous and very, I don't know, heartbreaking or what. He had 7 sons, and all his 7 sons he sent one by one, they were on the ground. And eventually he said, okay, I have to go and kill this boy who has killed my sons. Okay, Abu Sha'sa was defeated as well. When he came back and he took his veil, everyone realized, wow, this is Abbas, the 14 years old boy of Ali. How did he manage such a battle? You know, this is how, of course, the bravery and the power of Abbas was, and this is why Shamr was very concerned. Although there were only 70 men, he was concerned about Abbas only. He was not afraid of anyone else. That's why on the night of Ashura, he sent immunity for Abbas. He said, you are secure, you are immune, come to our side. And then, of course, Abbas, in the beginning, he didn't want to listen at all. Then Imam said, he is your relative. He was a relative of his mother. His relative, go and listen. You see, again, this nobility of character. He is your relative. He's calling you. Go and talk to him. And he came and he said, I have managed to get immunity for you from Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. So come with your brothers. He had 3 brothers as well. Come with your brothers to my side. And he said, you give me immunity, and the grandson of the Prophet has no immunity in this land. What is this? Are you not ashamed of yourself? And then he came back. Now, on the day, of course, Imam wanted Abbas to be there until the last moment, because Abbas was someone who was somehow putting fear in the heart of the enemy. So he was with Imam until the last moment. The last moment when everyone was killed, he, of course, with the Imam said, let's go now. The children are dying out of thirst. Let's go bring some water. There are 2 different stories. You may have heard a different one, that he went alone. But the more authentic story is that both of them went together, Imam and Abbas together. They went to get some water for the children. And then in the middle of the way, because of the force of the enemy, Imam was stopped and could not move forward. Abbas could just break the lines of the enemy and go into the water, into the river. Now, going into the river, again, we have these noble things reported to us. You know, instinctively, a person who has been thirsty for a couple of days, had not sipped a drink of water for a couple of days, and has fought from the morning up till now in that heat of Karbala. I mean, instinctively, when he enters the water, the first thing he would do, he'd take some sip of water, isn't it? Now, they say he entered the water, he took instinctively some water to drink. فَذَكَرَ عَطَشَ الْحُسَيْنِ. He remembered the thirst of Hussein alayhi salam. He did not drink. He did not drink. So he filled the water skin, after a fashion, of course, with difficulty, because they were attacking him from every side, and came out. And then you know the rest of the story. He tried to bring this water skin to the camps, and he couldn't. Everywhere he tried, he couldn't somehow escape the lines of the enemy. And eventually he came from the palm orchards, that side, to come round the camps. And it was there that his both hands were cut off, because they had ambushed him from behind the palm trees. He had two sons, Ubaydullah and Fazl. Of course, they were very young in Karbala. Once Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam looked at his son, visited his son. His name was Ubaydullah ibn Abbas ibn Ali. Having a glance of Ubaydullah, tears came to face of Imam Zain al-Abidin, remembering Abbas, his uncle. Said that, Rahimallah Ammi al-Abbas, may Allah have mercy on my uncle Abbas. And we have in another tradition from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam that Inna Ammi al-Abbas kana nafidul basira. He had huge insights, penetrating insights. You had just started to talk, he knew where you are coming from. And this is why no one could deceive him with regards to Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Nafidul basira, sulbul iman. Kana nafid al-basira, sulbul iman. He had solid faith. جاهد مع أبي عبد الله عليه السلام وأبلى بلاء حسنا ومضى شهيدا. What a trial he went through. What a trial he went through in Karbala. Now, when Imam Zain al-Abidin looked at him, looked at Ubaydullah, said that, may Allah have mercy on my uncle Abbas. The hardest day on the Prophet was when his uncle Hamza was killed and mutilated. Then after that, this is what Imam Zain al-Abidin is telling to Abbas's son. Then after that was Muta, when his other uncle, Ja'far, was killed and his both hands were cut off. You know, Ja'far had the same plight as Abbas actually. In Muta, in the battle with Romans, he lost both his hands and he was martyred. And God gave him two wings to fly with angels. And my uncle Abbas, the hardest of all. The hardest of all. Why hardest of all? I tell you. But about these wings, you shouldn't think that these are physical wings. For example, Ja'far flies with his body. No. Wings, generally when we talk about wings of angels, these are things which would elevate them close to the sublime place of a spiritual realm, God. The more they have wings, metaphorical, the closer they are. When we say Allah has given them wings to fly with angels, means that He has elevated them, that with the help of what He has given them, they can go closer and closer to God where no human being can go, because the others don't have those wings, so to speak. No human being could go. So he said, first was Hamza, then was Ja'far. But no day was like the day of Hussein. And this was really the case. I mean, no battle, no calamity, no hardship, no heartbreaking situation was like the situation of Hussein alayhi salam. Because Hamza was fighting with mushrikun. Ja'far was fighting with Romans. Imam says 30,000 men came round him, all claiming that they were following his grandfather, claiming that they were Muslims, and they killed him in that way. And my uncle Abbas sacrificed whatever he had, and just like his uncle Ja'far, he was given the wings, what would take him close to God. What is more heartbreaking, you know, when they saw Hussein, Abbas, Ja'far, Uthman, Abdullah, 5 sons of Ali, and a couple had been martyred before. 5 sons of Ali lining together as last remnants of this army. They rejoiced. Now it's time to take our revenge from Ali, isn't it? Now 5 sons of Ali, we can kill all of them. And they did, of course. They killed all of them. But they couldn't kill the name of Ali, and they couldn't kill the epic that Hussein alayhi salam created on that day. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi tahirin.
Q&A. Questions, comments? Whilst you're putting your thoughts together to come up with a question, you talked about generosity and what ennobles us. The food bank challenge is still open. The flyers are out there, so it is for a good cause. It is for helping out humanity and reaching out to help others in the process too. So, questions, comments?
Giving your wealth. I had heard this long time back about Hadith Qudsi, that the Prophet said that Allah told the Prophet that whatever is more than you using, that's not yours actually. It should be used in the name of Allah. And somehow, somewhere, as you said, it's very, very difficult to give. And however much you give, you still feel it's not enough, right? And then you enter into some sort of guilt sometimes as to, should I be spending this on myself? Because in this part of the world, we hardly see poverty. We don't see poverty. Where we grew up, we saw poverty. And alhamdulillah, with the TV and everything, our children can see poverty if they want to see poverty. So our neighbors now extend more than next door neighbors. It extends very, very far. But again, where do you draw the line? And I think you clarified that today very well.
Okay, thank you. It's a nice comment. Thank you so much.
Anybody else?
I think the talk was so clear. No one has questions.
Yes.
Sheikhna, you mentioned that what was very disappointing in Karbala is that the enemy were Muslims who were fasting, praying, and reading Quran as well. What level of their soul was it, or what had gone wrong with them that they were able to do what they did on the sands of Karbala, despite their religiosity? Something which is similar that we see today with ISIS, as well as some other Muslims who go and blow themselves up in mosque and other places, shouting Allahu Akbar. How do we explain that kind of behavior?
Yeah, this is very interesting. I usually think after what Muslims did to Hussein alayhi salam, whatever else they do in the world is not amazing. I mean, ISIS, Khawarij, others. You know, if we take religion just as a veneer of pretension, or just as a bargain with God, that, okay, I pray and you give me paradise, eventually it becomes like that. Just the mechanical things you do, and you expect reward for it. Eventually it brings people to this situation. If the religion is depleted of noble character, depleted of taqwa, of khashiyah of God, then of course this is what we should expect from people to do. And it's not only Muslims. You see what Christians have done during the history, in crusades, in other instances, what Jews have done during the history. And any religion which becomes depleted of that soul and spirit of faith and just becomes a mechanical thing, then of course this is the eventual outcome. Especially nowadays, you hear many of these people joining ISIS are converts, new converts. You see, yesterday, he didn't know anything about Islam. Today, he converts and say, you are not Muslim, I want to kill you. You see, this is very funny. And just 1 month or 2 months, they have become Muslim, and then they want to kill Muslims because they are not Muslims. And I have actually seen such people. It's very funny. The way, I mean, they think, their mindset is very, very difficult to understand. And of course, those superficial Muslims which are very shallow in their understanding of Islam.
Anybody else? Give the mic over.
Alaykum salam.
Sheikh, you mentioned that one of the interactions between the people of heaven and people of hell, as you said, will happen beyond the realm of distance or location. So that assumes that the existence in the hereafter is non-physical, okay, because those are the assumption of that kind of communication or that kind of awareness is beyond the capabilities that we have in our physical being. Yet the Quran sometimes describes the afterlife in very literal ways. So what I'm trying to reconcile is, on the one hand, we understand our spiritual existence after passing through this life as a non-material, not dependent on the senses that we have of sight, sound, smell, the way we perceive things. It'll be extrasensory ways to perceive. Yet the Quran in many places talks about, rivers and existence that are very physical. How do we reconcile that without sounding too mystical? Okay.
No, it's physical. I mean, if we want to say that life in hereafter is not physical, then we have to actually commit huge interpretation of many verses of the Quran, many traditions. And that is really not reasonable to do. The most reasonable thing is to accept that it's physical. However, a physical world which is completely different from this world, this physical life, with different rules, with different things coming into existence, which we don't know yet. Inshallah, when we talk about dunya and the way we have to perceive it, I will talk a little bit about how things in hereafter would amazingly be different from what we know here. However, still is physical. Still is physical, but you can imagine if, for example, our science and technology progresses to an extent that we could have physical transfer from one place to another place, from one planet to another planet, as we see in science fiction films, okay? If it is possible, if the physical rules there change, as the Quran says, يَوْمَ تُبَدَّلُ الْأَرْضُ غَيْرَ الْأَرْضِ, this earth would change into a new earth, and a different earth. It means its physical qualities would change, rules would change. So it wouldn't be difficult to think that, yes, it's both physical, but not like the physical world that we have here. All these things are possible there. It's physical, but the level of intelligence would be raised to an extent that even the earth would speak, even our hands would speak, would witness, for example, things. How is it possible? It's not understandable for us because we don't know that realm. But what we understand from these verses is that this is how it is going to happen.
We get the mic over here to Dr. Ashik. You're next.
Assalamu alaikum. Today on CNN there was a program with Farid Yeah.
Farid Zakaria.
And he was interviewing a person who wrote a book by the name of Russell. I think he proclaims himself being an atheist. And the book actually focused on the fact that there's 20% of the population, of your Muslim population, is either jihadist or what do you call it, Islamist. That's number one. And the second thing is also that it's not possible for Muslim countries to proceed with democratic society at all. Would you have any comment about that?
Well, this statistics I cannot comment on. The 20% of Muslims are jihadists or what. I don't know where this figure has come from or how he has established that. We have to see in the book. So I cannot.
Islamists and jihadists together.
Yeah, Islamists and jihadists.
What he meant, let me clarify. What he meant jihadists, like, as we know, jihadists being somebody who kills himself for whatever reason it is. And it also meant Islamist, where the imposition of the Islamic law to others by force.
But you see, those numbers are because I'd seen the interview previously with Bill Maher, and he took that particular statistics, and Farid was today challenging him, where did you get these numbers from? You know, it's off his head. Then he quoted a Presbyterian organization that had done all the statistics in the last 40 years of how Muslims have behaved. And based on that, he'd do that. But you know, statistics are statistics. You know, whoever wants to put any numbers across, and that's what Farid was trying to establish today.
Yeah. I don't think we can comment on statistics anyhow. What was the second part of the question, sir? Oh, democracy. This issue of Islam and democracy, whether they are compatible or not, is a long debated issue, actually. And both Sunni and Shia scholars and thinkers have talked about this, thought about this, debated about this, written about this. And when we talk about democracy, I think we have to separate two things. Democracy as a method and democracy as a value. Democracy as a value is that whatever people say and vote for is right. Okay, and we have to practice it. Democracy as a method is that, okay, we have certain set values which is given to us and we don't want to violate that. However, managing society based on those values, we leave it to the vote of the people. That means people cannot vote for everything. They cannot change values, but they can vote for what administration should we have, what sort of government we should have. This is democracy as a method, as against democracy as value. What I understand is that if we take democracy as a value, then we cannot, of course, acknowledge that it would conform with Islamic thinking, because we have set values in the Quran that we cannot change it by the vote of the people. But democracy as a method, I think, is a very good thing, and it's quite compatible with the way we have been taught about the seerah of the Prophet, the practice of our imams. Democracy as a method is a very good thing.
Yeah, but then there is also a comment that has been made in the United Nations, and those people that are calling out the accolades of Imam Ali's democracy and his dictate to Malik, in its truest sense, government of the people, for the people, by the people.
Yeah.
And today, if it's either me or the highway.
Yeah.
Raza, you had a comment.
Assalamu alaikum. I wanted you to speak a little bit more about the method of prayers. You touched on it, but you did not elaborate it. We pray, Muslims pray in a certain manner. Many other faiths have different ways of praying. People pray in silence, and in all different religions have different ways. And that's one of the ways we are differ, so to speak, in our rituals and methods. Some people like meditation, for example, as a method of quietness. The question is that if a particular method does not give you a deep satisfaction in your heart, are you free enough, as long as you are contemplating about God and the sacred? How important is the method?
You know, what we understand from the Quran and the narrations from the Prophet is that if you want to satisfy yourself by bringing your mind closer to God, yeah, you can do whatever you want, contemplate, meditate. All these things are, I mean, any method which would somehow resonate with your heart and mind is good. However, this is not regarded as worship. This is just a method to bring you in a higher spiritual ambience, okay? The prayers that we are told to do is worship. And worship should be legislated by someone who knows how we have to worship God. And therefore, we have to somehow distinguish between these two. I may not be happy from my way of worship, or from the prayers I do would not give me satisfaction. Okay, I do it for my worship because it's an obligation. Then I may go for other methods as well, which would somehow resonate more with my heart and mind. But if I am convinced that this is what the Prophet has said, that this is your way to worship God and glorify Him, then I have to do that. Beside that, I can do whatever I want. Yeah.
Get the mic over here, please. Sure.
Maulana, this afternoon we saw the movie Mary. And we heard the comments of the Presbyterian or a Protestant minister. There's always been a conflict within the Christianity itself between the RCs, that's the Roman Catholics, and the Protestants. And we all know how the Protestant movement started with King Henry VIII, was it? Or the 5th? Or something?
8th.
8th, right? So, but there's always been the challenge for many Muslims when I hear them debating with Christians. We normally take the Old Testament, and that's where we compare most of our findings or similarities in the Old Testament. But there's also something about the New Testament and the role of St. Paul, of how Christianity changed from its original inception. I would love to hear your version of what you think of St. Paul. I know it's a very difficult line to take, because we are really now not attacking, but we are really looking into a very sensitive part of Christianity, where the Trinity and all started from.
Yeah. Well, you were there this afternoon, certainly, and you noticed that the respected minister a couple of times emphasized when talking to a Muslim audience that Jesus, Son of God. Mm. And it was a bit offending, I think. She shouldn't have said that. And that's why I said that we never can come to an agreement with regards to Jesus, because we never believe that he's Son of God, and you believe that. But we can come to an agreement about Mary. About this issue of Trinity and Jesus being Son of God, based on what we understand and what we believe, is certainly a later development. Jesus himself never claimed that he was Son of God. The Quran explicitly mentions several times. And even when we go to the Gospels, there is no very direct and explicit statement about it. It's just certain metaphors that, for example, all are sons of God, or I am Son of God as well, meaning that I am created by God. Actually, someone has done research about this word in Aramaic. You know, Isa speaks in Aramaic, neither in Hebrew nor in Greek or whatever. And this was something which was used commonly there for the believers, those who believe in God. Anyhow, this was a later development. And initially, when Christians wanted to preach Christianity to non-Jews, there was a huge controversy among the disciples, whether we are allowed to preach Christianity to non-Jews or not. And then eventually they agreed, but the concern was that these non-Jews have this idea of God the Father and God the Son, Jupiter and Apollo. And how are we going to explain to them? Simon Peter, Shamun al-Safa we have, who we believe that was the wasi of Isa alayhi salam, was a ma'soom, one of the disciples of Jesus. Of course, he had huge concern about this. And initially when Paul said that I want to go and preach to non-Jews, he opposed that. Of course, now the history is putting it in a very mild way, the controversy. We know that St. Barnabas had quarrels with St. Paul with regards to his teachings, and they parted. They were initially traveling with each other. Then in Cyprus they parted from each other, and with very huge bitterness, St. Barnabas parted from St. Paul. There's a very beautiful film made by Christians, and it's available on YouTube, Peter and Paul. And I really advise that you see this film, Peter and Paul. The way they disagreed at the beginning about how they had to preach Christianity. Of course, it's a Christian version of the whole issue, but you can realize how differences were there right from the beginning. Anyhow, when Christianity went to Roman Empire, then came this argument about nature of Jesus. Is he like Apollo, son of God? You know, the Jews were observing Sabbath, and the Christians were observing Sabbath. Until long time, Sunday was the day, Apollo was sun, isn't it? Sunday was the day of Apollo. And actually then they said, okay, we move Sabbath to Sunday. And 25th of December was the birthday of Apollo. And they made, because no one knew what date Christ was born, so they made that date to be the birthday of Jesus Christ as well. So there's a lot in the history. But this is not something that you can now discuss with Christians. First of all, St. Paul is the second figure in Christianity, certainly. And they are never going to accept these discussions from us. What we know is that, of course, St. Paul was very influential in spreading this idea of Jesus being Son of God. And also the idea that believing in Jesus is enough and you don't need to follow the Jewish law. And in that film, Peter and Paul, actually this controversy is shown as well, that if non-Jews convert to Christianity, what should they do? Should they follow what we do? Because they were Jews still. I mean, they were following Christ, but they were Jews. They were following all the rituals of Judaism. So what should we do? Should we demand them to do circumcision? Should we demand them to eat halal food? They had this concept of halal food as the Jews have now. And all these controversies were somehow brought up by Paul. That, no, why should we demand them to do these things? They can just come to Jesus Christ. Anyhow, this is a long discussion. I don't think we can help in this issue anything. Yeah.
We got a sister out in the back there has.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
I have a question for you that I guess maybe the other parents can identify with me as well on this one. You mentioned that one of the things is insaf, where we want for others what we want for ourselves, okay? As parents, that's a tough thing to do because, and not to belittle the fathers, but especially as a mother, you have that very deep connection with your child. You carry this child in your womb for 9 months, and then you nurse this child and you bring them up. So you've got a very special attachment to the child. And of course, the fathers contribute as well in their upbringing and so on. So how do we then, it's a struggle. Like, I'll be the first to admit, I'll always want the best for my child first. So now how do I, in order to establish that connection, I have to get rid of this bias in me. So how would we do that? Can you guide us?
No, I don't think that is the case. I mean, the love that we have for our children, for our parents, for our friends, you cannot show that love to others. I mean, it's quite natural. However, insaf means that, okay, you want the best for your child, and that's natural. But you have to appreciate that others also want the best for their children. And you have to acknowledge this and behave in a way that wanting the best for your child would not drive away this sense that, okay, others would want the best for their children as well, so I have to respect this, and I shouldn't behave in a way that, for example, I say, no, you shouldn't want the best for your children, only me have the right to love my child and want the best for my child. This is what is meant by insaf. Otherwise, of course, feelings, we cannot extend the same feeling to everyone. This is something quite natural. Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Mohsin, please.